Hey friends, welcome to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas.
And I'm Melissa Trevathan.
And we're so glad you joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in.
Ginny Yurich and her husband Josh are parents to 5 children and reside in Southeast Michigan. She is the founder of 1,000 Hours Outside, a global movement designed for any age child or adult in any environment. She is an author, speaker, podcaster, and all-around amazing human. You will love learning more about the incredible work Ginny is doing and all the ways she is helping us experience less time connected to screens and more time connected to nature and each other. You're going to love this conversation with our dear friend, Ginny Yurich. So I'm going to start out officially. I started having this conversation with them over lunch, but we got stopped with a million different things. But do you remember that for whatever reason, I guess my publicist reached out to you, maybe when the new book came out and said, we have Sissy Goff on. I don't know how all that came
I
about.
reached out to you.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Jenny.
And I said, I love your book and will you please come on?
Oh,
Yes.
that's awesome.
Are we actually going? Have we started?
We're started.
Can I
Yeah.
tell you a story?
Yeah.
Can we kick it off with a story?
Please.
Yes.
Okay. So we did a 1,000 Hours Outside trip this summer. We've done 2 of them. We went to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. This was one trip. And all these families came. They got little kids, big kids. And one of our adventures was we went to this place called Black Rocks, where you go out on these rocks. They're high up above the water and you jump off into Lake Superior.
Cool.
So we're going on this adventure and everyone's excited and everyone's nervous because it's like this big jump. So I'm giving advice. You know, I'm like, you're only in the air for 1 second. You know, you can do it. And I'm cheering everybody on. And little kids are going and big kids are going and adults are going. And then they were like, well, why don't you go? And I was like, I've never gone. So I was doling out the advice for all these people to jump off the rock. And I was like, I haven't gone. So I go up and I was like, I got to go. I'm here. We are leading this trip. I have to go on. I have to jump off the rocks. And so I get up to the edge and I can't. Like my legs will not go. My legs will not go. Wow. And it was actually kind of awkward. You know, I'm like, people are chanting my name. There's like 70 people up. There's people over on the shore. Jenny, Jenny. And I was like, my legs are not going. I can't do it. And I was annoyed that I'd even planned the trip for like a millisecond. Like, why are we here? And so I was standing next to this other mom who was also nervous. And she said, I heard if you count back from 7 to 1, you know, it helps your brain to calm down. She said something like that. And then it just triggered in my mind. I was like, oh, I'm frozen and I have a strategy for this. So you will not believe. I did my box breathing. I was like, if I get this around 2 or 3 times, and then I wasn't even all the way around the 3rd time and I went.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Oh,
It changed my
that's
life.
amazing.
I'll tell you one more. We want to talk about this one more time? Yes.
Yes.
Because I went to Colorado with for MOPS. I went to go tape for them. And then we had like one morning, I took one of our kids with us and our oldest daughter, and she wanted to go on a hike while we're in Colorado. So we drove over to the mountains. We had one morning. And so we chose this hike, the Emerald Lake hike. I was like, it's only 3 miles. I'm like, I can walk 3 miles, no problem. But it was a problem. Because you're like elevation, it was in the winter. We had to put these things on our shoes.
No.
And we get 10th of a mile in. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't breathe. I'm panicking. And I was just really exaggerating. Like, you know, I'm like, so hopefully my 14-year-old daughter will be empathetic. And she's going to say, Mom, we don't have to do it. You know, we don't have to. But she just stood there. And because she wanted to do the hike. Yeah. So I told her, I can do it. I was like, but every 10th of a mile, I'm going to have to stop and I have to like catch my breath. And I did my box breathing. And I just want to say, you're here interviewing me, but I want to say that these books, I talk about them all the time. And I know you have more than this, but The Worry-Free Parent and Raising Emotionally Strong Boys, and these are your people that are listening. If they don't have the book, these will change their lives, and they've changed our lives. I was telling you, David, that just yesterday I was recommending Raising Emotionally Strong Boys to a friend, and that these are the strategies that we're giving to our kids, and they're books that we come back to time and time again. So let's kick it off there.
You are so sweet. No, we want to kick it off talking about you because I don't know what rock we were hiding under that we weren't familiar with you yet when you invited me to be on the podcast. And then I think that day I left you a message and I was like,
did.
If Ginny asks you to be on her podcast, you do it. Because
you're going to fall in love with her.
Yes,
that's
exactly what I said. Because I don't know that I've ever been on a podcast where I have felt like someone was as thoughtful, as intentional, as well-read, and as excited, enthusiastic about the message as you were. I mean, it meant the world to me. I'm not kidding. And so when this came up and we were going to maybe get to have you here and get to have lunch with you, we have been so excited. We've been counting down the days.
This place is wonderful.
We knew we'd be
charming.
friends. And now we get to have
here.
Josh as our friend too. And it's just the best.
And the dogs.
And the dogs. And we
dogs.
apologize again that they are wrestling and making noise during this conversation.
That's how it goes.
Okay, so we are thrilled to get to talk about what you're doing. And it's been so fun to have you at Daystar. We've walked around, introduced you to everyone we could meet, talking about, I love that you called it a movement because if you're not familiar with the 1,000 Hours podcast, your Instagram account, you have got to follow, sign up, get all of our books right now, all the things, because we need you in the world. I mean,
yes, we do.
Talking about God's providence over lunch and all the different ways. I mean, we needed you for this time and this season of life and just could not be any more grateful. So we are so privileged to have both connected with you, been on your podcast. We would love to know the story behind the title. Yes. And where you feel like that concept of 1,000 hours outside is so important for kids.
Oh, the story comes from my dark days. I had a hard time. I don't think anybody really prepares you for like what the days are going to be like when you become a mother. And especially if you're staying at home, like you have all this preparation for pregnancy and birth. And then all of a sudden you're like, my husband's gone for 10 hours. Like, what exactly am I supposed to do? So I had all these friends that did a schedule, and it was like these 2-hour time blocks of like, it was like an activity, nurse, I can't remember, sleep every 2 hours. And so I was like, okay, I think I can do that. So I had the whole thing planned out. It was like, I had an 8 a.m. I am not kidding. I had like the 8 a.m. time block is when we're going to go for a walk and then nurse and then he'll sleep and then I'll clean and then the 10 a.m. and then I'm going to exercise and the noon. I know. But like nothing. It was a mess. We came home and I was like, okay, first of all, nothing starts at 8 a.m. Like you're up all night. Right. And then he didn't sleep at all. And in fact, the lactation consultant at the hospital said, wow, he has a voracious appetite. And I was like, well, he's like 2 hours old. How could you even know? What are you talking about? And it turned out like he's a big boy. He's 16 now. He's like way taller than I was by the time he was 10. And so all he did was like the nurse and he never slept. And I was just really struggling. Then we had a couple more kids and I was so wanting to love being a mom. And I was not loving being a mom. I was so overwhelmed. I feel like depending on the stage of life, it's like I came in from being somewhat successful. Like I was a teacher and I was pretty good at it. And you have these things and you're accomplished. And then all of a sudden you're like, this child cries all day and the brother and everyone's crying. And so sometimes I would go to like the library program. And it would be, 10 in the morning and you get there and you have to take everyone's stuff. You got 3 kids. Right. So they're all in different size diapers and they all have different snacks and they have their books and there's some of them are in car seats and you have to make sure you get through the parking lot and you get in the door and did anybody get their fingers pinched? And then you go into the thing in the room and they're fighting over the toys and they don't want to do the craft and you're nursing and like, then you can't help your kid because you're nursing the baby. And then it would end and it was like 11 a.m. I was like, we haven't even done lunch. Like, we have to do this back. And I would call back, can you come home from work? I got 8 more hours till you're going to see. So I was just really in that dark spot and bummed that I was in the dark spot because I love kids and I was excited to be a mom. And I had a friend, just this random thing. And I do believe that sometimes your life can change in a day. Your life can change in a sentence. Wow. So your answer might be there. Like your answer might be there today. You may be in the pit. And your answer's coming. Yeah. And my answer came. It came in a day at MOPS, which has changed to Momco. And we already talked about that because we were out there for the hike. And I was at MOPS, which was really an amazing program for me when I had little kids. You're supposed to drop your kids off. You get 2 hours. They help you build friendships. Such a blessing. My kids would never stay with the class, but that was another story. So I had a friend at MOPS. Her name's Angela. We're still friends. She lives in Texas. And she had a child that was older than our oldest 1 year. And they were going to homeschool. We were going to homeschool. So she had been doing some research on different educational philosophies. I was like, thank you. Just pass it on. And she came one time and she said, there is this woman named Charlotte Mason who says kids should be outside for 4 to 6 hours a day whenever the weather is tolerable. And my initial reaction was, what a weird thing. Like, that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And you know what? Do you know Charlotte Mason?
No.
Okay. Charlotte Mason is from the 1800s.
No.
Yes. She didn't tell me that. She did not include that piece of information.
I thought Charlotte Mason's so proud, but
I learned this years later that this is old news, And so I'm glad I didn't know that because I would have just been like, well, whatever. She's been long dead. You know what? I'm not listening to that lady. But she says, well, 4 to 6 hours a day, whenever the weather is tolerable, will you please try it with me? And I just thought, oh, this is going to be the worst day I've ever had. No way. Have you been to the library program? Like, this is mayhem, but 5 times longer. And she said, we're going to meet at this park. And it was September in 2011 in Michigan, the fall. It's beautiful there. We're going to meet at this park from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. Bring a blanket to sit on, bring some food. I was like, well, should I bring my water table, like Play-Doh? I mean, I'll bring all our books, like crafts. I mean, what are we going to do? What are these? We had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a baby, something like, she had the similar age. And she was like, no, you don't bring anything. I was like, you don't bring anything? What's going to happen? And so we show up at this park and I'm thinking, oh, here comes the worst day of my life. And we spread out our blanket. And would you believe it, David and Sissy, the kids just played. They played. And for the first time, my blood pressure dropped.
Wow.
And I got to inhale, God's goodness and the sunshine and the fresh air. I got to finish a conversation with a friend. We each had babies and the babies would nurse and fall asleep. They look up at what nature's mobile, right? The trees that are going and the clouds that are going by and the birds are chirping and the kids ran around. And then we left. And they all fell asleep in the car. It was like a miracle of miracles. I just drove around. I was like, gas was cheaper. That's what we're doing. And all of a sudden it's 4 p.m. and we're getting close to dinner. It changed my life one day. It was the first good day I ever had as a mom.
Wow.
First one. And I've been a mom for 3 years. And so at that point, we really changed how we were doing early childhood. We looked for the tolerable weather days, and that's an important thing. Try to be outside for 4 to 6 hours. We started doing it as a family on the weekends. You get a chance to talk with your spouse, or, you really get a chance to connect. If you've got young kids at home, often you don't have that. Maybe you don't have a babysitter or that type of situation. And so for about 2 years, we really majored on this outdoor time. And then I came across this statistic, and it said the average kid in America is outside for 4 to 7 minutes a day, but on screens for 4 to 7 hours. Now, I come from my math background, right? I used to be a math teacher. And I thought, I'm kind of curious. I wonder how much time we're outside. And we've been doing this Charlotte Mason thing, 4 to 6 hours, a couple times a week, whenever the weather's tolerable. It ended up being about 1,200 hours a year. It was like 18 to 20 hours a week we're outside with these kids. It's 1,200 hours a year. It exactly matched the amount of time that kids are on screens or were on screens at the time. And I thought, we're not anti-screen. Our kids have different screen things, and we've got some video games and things. But I thought, how much life would we have lost if that 1,200 hours would have gone to screens instead of these wonderful experiences that we have with our friends and out in creation? And here's the coolest part. The coolest part is that not only did I love it, but this is for the development of the whole child.
Yes.
You just go. And it helps not only their physical bodies, and we're talking about everything from like eyesight to circadian rhythm, right? This is not just like movement. This is their ligaments. It's so many things. Katie Bowman says osteoporosis is a childhood disease that shows up in adulthood. Now, she's a biomechanist.
Wow.
So she says kids are meant to jump and land. And every time they land has impact on their skeletal structure. So the physical benefits, obviously, they're so immense. We're talking about, myopia, all these things, but also this is helping them emotionally. It's helping us emotionally, which you really need these days. It's helping with social skills, of course, because kids are having to compromise, and it's helping with their cognition. We want kids to have quick brains because the world is changing fast. And for families that are interested, God is going to display his spiritual laws in creation for you. And so that you have a chance when you walk by the way, that you can talk about different spiritual principles with your kids. It's very natural.
And the wonder that there is outside. Wow.
I have had to resist yelling preach and yes for the last 5 minutes. The whole time you've been talking.
Oh,
Thank
so
you
good.
for everything you just shared.
Yes.
And that it birthed this beautiful movement that we are all benefiting from. So thank you. And
3 minutes, you already have, we have a great podcast. Right. Yeah.
And it includes your incredible book, Until the Streetlights Come On. Will you talk a little bit about the book and just even what you hope folks will take away from it? Sissy, how much are you loving the new Little Big Town Christmas record?
It is in heavy rotation at my house all the time.
If you'd heard me singing in the shower this morning, you would swear I think I'm the 5th member of Little Big Town.
Well, you'd be joining some of our favorite people.
Indeed. The reason I sing and linger in the shower is that most people know how important it is to filter the water they drink, but not the water they shower in. But not me. I am the proud user of a Jolie filtered shower head.
Jolie is a beauty wellness company that purifies the water we shower in for better skin, hair, and overall well-being. Jolie's filtered shower head is best in class for removing chlorine and heavy metals. Chlorine is added to our water systems to disinfect it and kill bacteria, but chlorine is damaging to our hair and skin and fundamentally causes issues. Jolie fixes this.
Jolie shower heads have a beautiful, sleek design, the perfect combination of form and function, but, and this was very important to me, still gives strong water pressure.
And fits all showers as the plumbing pipe size is universal.
Jolie will give you your best skin and hair guaranteed. Head to jolieskinco.com/RBG to try it out for yourself with free shipping.
And if you don't like it, you can return your Jolie for a full refund within 60 days, no questions asked.
Parenting has become really pressure-filled and scary and full of fear. And that's sort of where I was coming from, right? I'm trying to enroll my kids in these classes. I'm trying to listen to classical music on my belly when they're in the womb. Like, it's this pressure to go for this finish line. But what even is that finish line, right? And I do think that our world is changing so fast. We were talking earlier before we even started about, like, I did a career assessment in high school. Well, would it have said podcaster? No, right? That didn't exist. And so I do believe that when we approach today and we live it fully, and we live it fully, we honor the developmental needs of the child, and in turn, it helps us too, but that's what prepares us for tomorrow. It's a full life today is what prepares us for tomorrow. So until the streetlights come on is the way that a lot of people used to live. Most people used to live. Their day was filled with play. People spent 1,000 hours outside, probably way more, for generations and generations. And that's just a very recent change. And so I feel like society used to be set up in a way, maybe not even on purpose, that honored childhood, that honored their need for autonomy and play and downtime and wonder and movement. And then, I mean, when I was a kid, it was like you could watch cartoons on Saturday till noon. My parents didn't have to come turn it off.
Yes.
They were off.
Right.
There was nothing on Sunday. WWF. Who wants to watch that? I would be mad. I was like, man, can they put something else on Sunday? No. So you had to go play. And all the other kids had to go play. So society was set up in this way that it just naturally it protected those spaces of childhood. And when all the screens came in and parents are overwhelmed and naturally and we're working and it's just so hard, that childhood no longer has that sort of realm of protection. And so it's on the shoulders of the parents, and it's a big ask. But Kim John Payne says, and he's one of my favorite authors. He wrote in Simplicity Parenting, he says, when you rescue your kid's childhood, he says, little by little, day by day, they rescue you back. That's how he ends that book.
It's beautiful.
That's a spoiler.
Will you say it one more time?
Yes, I feel bad. It's like, it is the very last sentence. But you still want to read the book. He says that when you rescue your kid's childhood, he says, I actually said it wrong. When you rescue your kid's childhood, he says, remarkably, inevitably, little by little, day by day, they rescue you back. And that is the truth.
That is the truth.
That those spaces are really meant for us too. And I used to be jealous. I actually, for a long time, I was sort of jealous. I grew up and there was this family across the street. They had 4 kids and the mom locked them out in the summer and they roamed the neighborhood and there was a park. And I don't know. I was always kind of like, well, what are they eating? Like what is she doing in there? I used to wonder what's she doing in there?
Yes.
And then I became a mom and I was like, okay, I get it a little bit more. And I was jealous. Because I was like, oh, I wish I was the mom that could just be like, out you go and I'm going to lock the door. But what I've realized is we're living in an age of swirling information as well with a lot of pressures. And so actually it's a huge blessing for myself that I'm also a part. I've been outside for 10,000 hours over the past 10 years, around there a little bit more. And it's helped me too. I have needed it. I think we all need it in this day and age.
Yes.
We sure do.
More than ever.
We would love for you to share 3 practical things you think parents can start implementing immediately based on all your research.
Yes. Okay. I have these things. It's called the 3 Fs.
Yes.
I don't even know if this is the right answer to the question. This is more
There
advice.
is no right answer.
But
We want to know what
the
you
3 F's
think.
are food, friends, and a first aid kit. So this is my practical advice. What do you need to go outside? You don't need much. You don't need much money. And people ask a lot, like, well, what if I'm in the city? What if I'm in the country? And I feel like you gotta just take whatever nature you have nearby. Use what you have nearby. There's pros and cons to all of it. In fact, Dan Buettner, who is the centenarian Blue Zones guy, how do you live to be 100? He says the best thing is to live in a walkable city. People are always kind of down on the city life, but I'm like, no, if you live in a city, you get to walk places. So you're going to embrace that. If you're out in the country, you're not walking anywhere and there's no kids to play with. So people kind of like idealize the country living, but I'm like, no, in the suburb, you're going to have friends, hopefully, but they're not outside. So good luck. Read Mike Lanz's book, Playborhood. Put all your play stuff in the front yard, entice the kids out.
Wow.
But if people are like, well, where do I start?
You're amazing.
We're going to start with some good food. So down here in Daystar, they're making pumpkin bread. Make something good for your kids. Bring them a good treat. You have to bring friends. This is not a thing. It's for safety. It's for an extra set of eyes. You're going to have to find one friend. You don't need a lot. Just one friend who's going to come with you. They're going to go with you to the park. A grown-up friend so that they bring their kids and there's extra kids to play with. That's going to change the game. Can you do that? And you're going to bring your first aid kit because someone's going to fall and cry and that type of thing. You're going to do anything. You're going to go and you're going to say, we're going to stay for a little bit. We're going to go to the school playground once school's over. We're going to go on a half-mile hike. We're going to go walk to the park at the corner in Brooklyn. My brother lives in Brooklyn. There's all these corner parks. We're going to walk to that. We're going to go to Central Park. We're going to go and we're going to commit to be outside for a couple hours. We're going to stay. And the importance is that Angela Hanscom, who wrote this book called Balanced and Barefoot, she's a pediatric occupational therapist and has been on the front line of seeing all the decline in skills, like the sensory processing, all of these things. And she ladders not everything, but a lot of it back to the fact that kids are not outside, right? And having all these different experiences. So she says it can take up to 45 minutes for kids to develop their play scheme. That's a lot of work. These kids are creating something out of nothing. They're going out and using these natural elements, the grass and the sticks, and they're coming up with these worlds. It takes a little bit of time. So for 45 minutes, they might be saying, this is boring. Well, I want to go home. And we're going to stick it out. We're going to say things like, it's okay to be bored. Or, I trust you'll find something to do, right? So I love the Love and Logic books. They say, sound like a broken record. To say it over and over again, be boring yourself. And you got confidence. And then what happens is, at some point it switches. And now they're in this magical world. If you've got teens, they're in some in-depth conversation. They've changed the game. They're playing at the volleyball net, but now they're hitting the football over and they've created something new. And you give it a little bit of time. And that's what happened for me. It was one day, 1 4-hour where I was like, oh my goodness, we're all thriving. All of us are thriving. And if you give it a shot, then you realize this is helping all of us in all of these different ways. So that would be my advice: food, friends, and a first aid kit.
That's so good.
Brilliant.
I love it.
I'm
taking
brilliant.
notes.
Me too.
Can't wait to go outside with
So
Henry
our folks
Witt,
listening-
nephews.
Oh, yes.
So we'd love to ask you, you've shared a few great thoughts in this space already, but any other thoughts on just what unstructured play does for a child's future?
Okay, it does everything. I mean, our world is unstructured. We used to live in a world that you would be heading toward a 30-year career, and that does not exist anymore. So our kids are heading into a world where they have something like 6 jobs, 6 careers is really what they say within the first decade of adulthood. And so we need kids who are adaptable and resilient and quick and who can risk. And I talked to this woman, Dr. Jean Twenge. She has written some phenomenal books.
Yes.
iGen is my current favorite of hers. But she was saying, and she's a college professor, that within the last few years, kids are coming to college. And she says they can't even make simple decisions without texting their parents. So we're struggling, right? Our kids are struggling. Like, they have to have this for autonomy and they need it for their future. So get this. All right. We don't think of going outside and relating it with academics or cognition or anything, right? It feels frivolous. It feels like if we have time, we're going to do that. But it's got to be at the forefront. Here's why. There is a phenomenal book called Smart Moves. It's by this woman named Dr. Carla Hannaford. The subtitle is Why Learning is Not All in Your Head. She's got some fantastic books. She's in her 80s, and she didn't learn to read till she was 10. And she says back then it didn't matter. She got this whole thing. Now she's in her 80s. It didn't matter. And in this book, Why Learning is Not All in Your Head. So she has this statistic. And she says this: elderly people who dance regularly have a 76% less chance of developing dementia or Alzheimer's. Okay, so I'm going to say it again. Elderly people who dance regularly have a 76% less chance of developing dementia and Alzheimer's. And if you play a musical instrument, it's 69% less chance. And what she talks about in her book is that movement creates the neural pathways in the brain. That movement and brain development are this intrinsically related thing. And so what happens when your kids go outside is nature provides them this environment to move in all sorts of complex ways. Like, what are your kids doing? And it naturally scaffolds for them. They can get a little bit high. They start in the apple trees and then they can get a little bit higher. I remember we had one of our children for 2 years was working on getting her leg up over the fence. She wants to swing her. She'd climb up. She'd swing her leg over. She couldn't get the movement. She'd climb back down and just over and over again. And that is not anything I had to push her to do, to tell her to do. And even there's this vestibular sense. Do you guys talk about this much? Right? The vestibule to the brain. And this is how our body knows where it is in space. And it's the foundation for all of the other senses. And if your vestibular sense is off, it's going to just mess with some of your other development. Well, how is it built? It's when your head is out of an upright position. I'm like, well, what do kids do? They somersault. I mean, when I was a kid, I never walked down the stairs on my feet. I walked down on my hands. Did you do that?
Correct.
You walk down the stairs on your hands.
No,
and
but I
thunk,
100%
thunk, thunk,
believe
thunk,
you
thunk, thunk,
did.
right? That's because
Awesome.
it's waking your brain up. And when
that's
kids hit
so
puberty, the little fluid in the ear, the endolint fluid it's called, it thickens. So what's happening is when your head is all spinning around and you're not just sitting in one space, this fluid is moving around in your ears and it's moving those little hairs. And when you hit puberty, the fluid thickens. And so it takes a little bit longer for those hairs to prong back up. You get motion sickness. So this is the time for kids to be like somersaulting and crab walking and wheelbarrow racing and all of the things and not sitting with their head just in one spot. So what's happening when we take our kids outside? All of the sensory input, all of the movement, all of the complex movement, all of the imaginative play is giving them this robust brain that they're going to have for a rapidly changing world.
I mean, I keep forgetting that I'm supposed to ask a question. I just could listen to you talk about anything for hours.
Yes.
It is so fun to hear your perspective, and you are brilliant.
Yes.
It makes me a little sad that you're always interviewing people because I want you to be talking more. I love what you're talking about. Okay, so next question I am supposed to ask, though. Here we go. I can't even find it. I'm so distracted by how amazing this is. So boredom. You talk in the book about what boredom contributes to our brains. Boredom is so important for kids. We know kids are experiencing less boredom than ever before. Can you talk about the benefits?
Yes. And let's just talk about how boredom can be scary. We feel like we're failing our kids. And we feel like everyone else is filling their time with every single extracurricular. That feels like it's the right thing to do, right? The good parents fill all the time. But how are our kids going to learn to love their own company? How are they going to learn to love what they love to do? And how are they going to be self-starters? So let's take it back to the Bible. This is a verse I love. And I always say, if you're not a Bible reader, but you can still read Proverbs because Proverbs is just a book of wisdom.
Yes.
And there's one for every day. And so even if you're like, meh, or maybe you've had a hard experience with the Bible, I recommend sometimes you can even just get the Proverbs book.
Mm-hmm.
And you read it, you read the proverb. We call it the proverb of the day. And one of my favorites says, because the Bible can be funny.
Mm-hmm.
It says, go to the ant, you sluggard. This is good. It says, go to the ant, you sluggard, and consider her ways and be wise. She has no chief or overseer or ruler, and yet she gathers her food in the summer. And I thought, this is a book about being this is a verse, a concept about being a self-starter. And how can you be a self-starter if for your entire childhood, everyone has told you what to do? They have filled every bit of your time. And I remember I substitute taught. I had a really eye-opening experience. I substitute taught one time for a kindergarten class. Bless those kindergarten teachers.
Yes.
Bless you.
Yes.
If you are if you are any teacher, bless you. Because this is an exhausting job and you have 1 million bosses, all these parents and all these administrators. This is an exhausting
and the children
hard
these
job.
days.
And all of the children. Yes. They're not the hardest part. I usually, this is a hard job. And so I substitute taught one time for kindergarten. And I went in and I get it because you're trying to keep it from devolving into, it's not, you don't want it to be chaotic. So the lesson plans were minute by minute. It was something like from 8:45 to 8:48 circle time, and 8:48 to 8:52 you sing this song, and 8:52 to 8:57. And I just remember thinking, well, like the one kid's tooth is loose and someone needs their shoe tied. I'm behind schedule, But I thought, if all of childhood is that, if all of childhood is a minute by minute adult directed experience, then how does a child adjust when they're sent off into the world and nobody tells you what to do. I've even struggled with that. We now have a small family business. It's a little bit newer. I never knew that this would grow to be anything, and it's become bigger than I could manage on my own. And so my husband Josh has joined in. We have this small family business we've had for about a year and a half. It's hard. No one's telling me this is your homework. This is what you need to do next. This is your practice. You have to figure it out on your own. And those are the types of things that come out of boredom. And there's another, I told you, I'm a huge Kim John Payne fan. He wrote a book with a man named Luis Fernando Llosa. It's called Beyond Winning. It's about toxic youth sports culture. So I think a lot of parents would find that one useful.
Yes.
However, even if your kids are not in sports, this is one of my favorite books I've ever read because it talks a lot about boredom. And what they say in that book is, when your kids are bored, you have not failed. And that's the message. We need that message. In fact, I love Glennon Doyle's got an amazing quote. We've got a whole group of kids who will never become writers. They'll never doodle. They're not kicking the soccer ball against the garage. They're not picking up their aunt's guitar and start strumming because they don't have that time to figure out all the things that they love. And hobbies, oh gosh, I just read the other day, I talked to someone, hobbies are protective. Hobbies are protective of just, when you have a hard time, but you have something you can turn to. Like I play the piano.
Yes.
Or I've now started to keep a little cross stitch with me as hands-on helps you brain release dopamine. So can we have little hobbies that are protective for our children when they go through hard times? So the hobbies, they come out of boredom. What do we love? So let them be bored.
I remember the first time I was at Disney World, not first time ever I went to Disney World, I was an adult, but standing in line and seeing kids on screens standing in line at Disney World and thinking, if we can't be bored in line at Disney World, we got a real problem.
Yeah.
But it's sure where our culture is.
Well, to that, we are all three in agreement. We're living in a screen-saturated culture. Jenny, for the parent who's sitting here listening and thinking, okay, I don't want my kids on screens so much. I do want them outdoors, but how do I make outdoor time more attractive? What would you say to that parent?
Food, friends, and a first aid kit. That's what I would say. There has to be friends. And so you got work. The parent has some work. You're going to be coordinating and you're going to be calling up other people. And what I say is our best days are the days where we just run out of time for screens. Those are our best days. I don't want to be a screen cop. So if we're out and we're having a great time, we come back and it's 9:30 or 7:30, depending on how old your kids are. If you got a 2-year-old, you're not up till 9:30. But you're coming back and everyone's exhausted and they're going to go to bed. And it was such a full day that you didn't have time for screens. So the friend component is a big one. And I think that people are more open now. People are more open to finding those other friendships. There's so many ideas out there. Can you invite people to you and drop your phones in the bucket? My friend Erin Lochner wrote a fantastic book with some really practical ideas called The Opt-Out Family. And so just one of my absolute favorite. I love her. Actually, all her books. She's got Chasing Slow. Her books are fantastic. But she's like, get a really fun, cool, like a cookie jar. I mean, everybody's phones go in. Invite people over. Have game night. Bring in someone who decorates cakes and teach a class. Like all of these different things that you can do. I think our kids deserve to know that real life can beat the screens.
Yes.
And we got that. I feel like, I got that. I got a chance to eat, and it's still even hard. Even though I got a childhood that was low screen, it's still even hard to combat it. What about the kids who don't ever get that? And then how are they going to be parents? How are they going to know what amazing things are out there to do and how good they make you feel and how many memories that you can make? So that's what we're trying to do. And what 1,000 Hours Outside does, it just keeps in the forefront. It's not really about the number. If you go outside this year for 600 hours, good on you. Good on you. That is a success. John Acuff says you cannot fail this. You can't fail. It's a win. It's all a win. If you have put in some time toward hands-on real life experiences with your family, you're winning.
What do you believe kids need most from their parents today? Thinking about all these things.
Well, that's a really deep question. What do kids need most from their parents? I feel like you should be answering that question. I was okay, wait. No. I've got my books right here. The Worry-Free Parent.
We love your perspective.
What do I think?
Good.
I think they need a model. And that is really a change that we've had over the past several years because we're a homeschooling family. And this is not advice for homeschooling or non-homeschooling, but I read something at the beginning of our homeschool years. It's a book called Learning All the Time by John Holm. And he said in this book, this really changed my life. It's a paragraph. He said, kids need some sense of how adult work is done. They need to see the table built from start to finish. They need to see how do you write a book. They need to see the process. They need someone to model for them. And it made me think like as a homeschool mom, I wasn't doing that. I was just orchestrating like now is time for your math and now is time for your piano practice. And I thought, well, my goodness, this really does make sense. And he says, well, what if you have no skills? And I was like, okay, well, a lot of us feel like that. I've got nothing. I've got nothing to model, like, what if you have no skills? He says, learn something and allow your kids to see you learning.
Wow.
And so I thought, okay, well, so we changed. Actually, I would say I'm sitting here today because of that passage, because what we did was I actually asked Josh is sitting here. I was like, Josh, I read this really cool thing. Like the kids, they need to be exposed to adult work and it gets, broader as they get older. And I was like, can they go on your business trip? He's like, no, they cannot.
Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. He's like, there's no kids there. Like, no one is bringing their kids. I was like, well, can you Zoom us in? Can we FaceTime and we'll just watch? You're going to do your presentation. You're doing whatever. He's like, no, like this is not how the world works. So I thought, well, I've got this 1,000 hours outside on the side that I've had for a long time. I thought we could take it up a little notch for the sake of including the kids. So we started a little t-shirt line. I'll tell you the story. This is a good story. We started this t-shirt line. And the t-shirts are ugly. I mean, I look back, I was like, these are the ugliest t-shirts. The writing went from like armpit to armpit and they were hideous. But the kids were they were little. They were like maybe 10 and under. And they sat with the meeting of how they make the t-shirts and what colors are we going to pick. And we're sitting and we have these t-shirts. And I thought and I spent $1,000. Now, $1,000 is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like a single income, you got little kids. And all the kids are like getting into braces. Nobody tells you about that part.
Oh.
They're like, have kids, it's so fun. Then they're like, well, I'm like at the orthodontist quite a bit here. I don't know. So I have these kids and $1,000, and I remember thinking like maybe this is a really poor use of our funds. And I was really nervous to get this first run of t-shirts, and they sold. All of them sold. So then what you can do is you reinvest, right? And so the story is that we're getting these t-shirts, and this guy at our church, this older guy, he had a company and he would supply our shirts. We're messing up the orders left and right. Like they ordered 2T, we sent 3T, we're messing up the people. So I'm like constantly having like, oh, I need another one. I messed this up. And he's getting us these t-shirts like this, 2 days later, he's showing up. I got the t-shirt. And then the wait time started to get longer and longer. It's like 5 days. I had all my t-shirts, 7 days. So finally I was like, Paul, what's going on with these shirts? They used to come so fast. And he said, when we first made our orders, it was during COVID. And he said, every other school program, sports team had shut down. And he says this in front of my kids. He says, and your business kept mine afloat.
Wow.
And that's the modeling.
Wow.
That's the modeling that when you step forward in faith and you try something that you believe in, you don't know who your paths are going to intersect with. So that I think we model, and I would say we're far from perfect. We're like, we're modeling like, if we're looking at the phone, so is the kid. We're modeling that. And Carlos Whitaker just came out with this book, and I asked him about it because his is like, what's the book called? And he's got the cowboy hat, Reconnected.
Uh-huh.
And I asked him, I was like, did you have to come back in? And so the premise of the book is that he like was Amish for 2 weeks and a monk for 2 weeks, and he was with the kids for 3 weeks, no phone. Someone else had his phone. He writes this book. And I said, well, when you come back, like, do you have to say to your kids, now you put your phone away because I don't have my phone? And he said, no, because I didn't have mine out. Neither did they. So I think kids need a model of someone who loves life, who is exuberant, who is optimistic, who sees that there's a great, grand old world out there, who knows that we're going to have hard times and we're going to make it through. And we're going to band together. And that's what I think.
I love that.
You just have described yourself and everything I have felt about you in this conversation.
truth.
You're so sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I'm serious.
Aw.
And I love that in the midst of answering that question, you gave a shout out to your husband, Josh, who's in the room. We
Yeah.
want to
Yes.
acknowledge that.
Yes.
And I would simply like to add that he is currently tangled up in a leash belonging to my 11-week-old puppy, swimming in chew toys and bones right now. What an adaptable, generous man we have on the other
Yes,
side of the
that is
room.
for
He is a
sure.
great dad.
He's
He
a
is
rock
great
Believe
star.
dad.
it.
He is an interactive dad. He's always the one in playing with the kids. My dad was the same. It was like the kids, it'll be like our kids will be playing with him, but all the other kids will play. He's the one in the pool. He's the one jumping off the black rocks. He's the one leading the hike. So
I believe
yeah.
every word
Me
of that.
too.
That's
Me
so
too.
believable. Okay, we've talked often about how in all these decades of doing this work, we just have never seen parents as discouraged and weary as they currently are. And Jenny, I think of your many strengths, you are one of the most hope-filled,
Yes.
deeply encouraging cheerleaders out there. Like, I want folks to read, listen, follow you
all
for
the things.
1,000 reasons, but in particular that your voice is just so deeply
who you are.
encouraging. And what would you say to weary, discouraged parents right now at this time in the world?
I would say go outside.
Mm.
I want to say this. I think there's a lot of hope. And I think there's a lot to look forward to. We have teens now, so this has been a really interesting path. I started going outside with our kids when they were 3 and under. We had 3 kids that were 3 and under. And now we have 5 kids. And our oldest is 16. And this still works. And that's something I couldn't have known. And I know it's going to work now forever. And whether you're going with your nieces and nephews, whether you're going with your parents, like my dad does 1,000 hours outside. He has our app on his phone. He gets his badges. He sends them to me. My dad is so healthy. He's out moving with my mom. They're out walking the neighborhood. This is something that for your entire life can enhance and fulfill it. But when our kids were little, getting outside looked like, so we had this double stroller that we got and used from a doctor. So it was really nice. It's a Bob stroller. So we got it used and it was really easy. You could push it like with your elbow and it would go the way you want it. It was a double stroller. There was never any kids in it because the kids are obsessed with me. I don't know. I'm like, I just don't get it. They all want to be held, all of them. So, you got like one on your front, one on your back, you're holding one on your hip, and then all of your food, which is a lot, and all of your diapers and all the extra clothes and your first aid kit is in the stroller, and you're pushing it with your elbow. So that's what outside time used to look like. And even still, it was wonderful. If I had to go back in time, I wish I could just relive it. It was wonderful. What do? We catch crayfish or crawdads, whatever you call them, wherever you live. We're down in the creek beds. We're just reading books under the trees. We're at the apple orchard. We're picking strawberries. It's wonderful. Do you know what it looks like now? It looks like I'm running after my kids as they're rappelling off of cliffs and jumping off of mountains and going down these and wanting to walk to Emerald Lake uphill in 10,000 elevation and I can't breathe. And I have these claws on my shoes and I wouldn't have gone. I would have turned around at 1/10 of a mile. But guess what? I went and I did it because now my 14-year-old leads the way. And I used to carry her and she used to be on my back and now she leads the way. And it's like, oh, they now have opened my eyes to wonders I would have never seen had we not invested when we love it. I love having teenagers. Our teenagers are so much fun. I cannot even tell you. Our kids are recording songs. They're interns for this video company. They are so fun. I just think parenting can be so fun. And it doesn't have to be, I look at my own life, like, is God ordained? God ordains your steps. That's what it says. In your heart, you plan your course, but my mom could not have known that someday I'm going to be sitting at this wonderful Daystar clinic in beautiful Tennessee with these 2 wonderful, lovely people in a room filled with cool cameras and objects and books and stacks and a puppy. And, you can't predict the wonders that lie ahead for your kids. So enjoy them today. Enjoy them. And know that when you do hands-on things, it helps them develop in every facet of their being. And so that's what you do, and you enjoy them today. I hope that doesn't seem like a pat answer. It's really what we have done. And I don't think that the test scores are all that important. I don't even think the homework is all that important. John Taylor Gatto, and I'm going to bring him up because you have one of his books on your shelf, A Different Teacher. I'm going to bring him up. He says that, this is a little controversial, but I'm going to say it anyways. He says so he was a teacher. He was a public school teacher 30 years and he won awards. I mean, he was like in New York Teacher of the Year, state teacher. I mean, this guy is like, and he recently passed away. I wish I would have gotten a chance to talk with him. But he has said, and it's well researched, that it only takes 50 to 100 hours for a child to reach functional literacy. And what he means by that is that at the right age and stage, so our kids didn't learn to read till they were 7. Dr. Carla Hannaford didn't learn to read till she was 10. But when they did learn to read, it happened very fast. They weren't reading, and then a couple months later, they're reading chapter books. So at the right age and stage, 50 to 100 hours to get to the point where you could learn anything you ever wanted to learn beyond that. So I thought, okay, well, if we don't want functional literacy to be like our goal, but the point of 50 to 100 hours is that that's such a small number. And we really give 15,000 hours of childhood a lot of times to education. So I don't think we need any more than that. If your kid is struggling because of homework after school, if they're 7 and they're sending home, I don't know what you say. Who did I say? Victoria Dunkley. She says, just send them a note and say, we don't do that. and then give them a really good gift at Christmas and Thanksgiving and Halloween. That's how you're going to do it, because you don't want to like put a black mark on your child. So come volunteer, like be a positive. But she even says like use my name, like just say and Madeline Levine. They're all saying the same thing. Like you can just say in our family we don't do homework in elementary school. And enjoy your kids. Go do stuff. When you pick them up after school, bring some good snacks and stay at the playground for an hour. So I think I think parenting. I always say we can do less and gain more. I think it's a message of hope that God made our world a place that facilitates the development of children, and that if we are there with them and provide that space for them to learn and to grow, it takes the pressure off us and gives them a chance to fly.
Do less and gain more. Okay, so if you're listening, you haven't already put the book, at least one book. How many books?
I don't know how many books I have, but I was telling you that I do have 3 books that are all called 1,000 Hours Outside, which was, I'm not good at entrepreneurship.
There's not a better title, so that makes sense.
We'll put them all in
the main book is called Until the Streetlights Come On.
Yes.
It was like, but I have a 1,000 Hours Outside activity book through DK Books.
Ooh.
Then I also have a different 1,000 Hours Outside activity book that we published, and I have a different 1,000 Hours Outside. But the main book is called Until the Streetlights Come On, How a Return to Play brightens our present and prepares kids for an uncertain future. Here's what I want as a parent. I want a good today. All we have is today. I just saw just yesterday, someone I was following, a friend on social media, and her child just got diagnosed with neuroblastoma. And she put the timeline on. A week ago, he was fine. And so we have today. Enjoy your kids today, and know that by giving them a full life today, that is going to prepare them for an unchanging future. That's what's going to prepare them for tomorrow. And what a gift that God made it that way.
What?
It does not have to be heads down, miserable, crying over homework. It does not have to be that. It can be a thriving present that leads to a thriving future.
Yes. Put the book in your cart. Buy it now. Follow on Instagram, 1,000 Hours Outside. Follow Jenny. What is it we do to podcasts? Subscribe to the podcast, all the things. And I didn't know about the app. So where can they find all the bulk of what you all are doing? And will you say about the app? So it's a challenge.
Okay, now here's a cool thing. The app has been the top ranked paid app in the entire app store. We don't even know what we're doing over here. Wow. We are just us. People send us emails all the time. Can we join your team? Here's my resume. Can someone from your team get back to us? We're like, well, we have no team. So, there we go. Josh is the team.
What a great
Josh
team.
is the team. And so the app is ranked, and it is a way to keep track of your time outside. It has a journal feature. And it is fun. We send these badges. It's just,
and it's called 1,000 Hours Outside.
Okay, so I'll tell you, you're going to go to 1000hoursoutside.com / all the things. That's where everything is. Because what we actually have, and what I also really love, is we have these tracker sheets. They've been designed by a global community, and they're beautiful. So it looks like a beautiful outdoor scene, and there's 1,000 spaces on it. So here is the math trick. If 1,000 hours seems like too much for you, then you use each space as 30 minutes and you're going for 500 hours. Look at this. So they're beautiful. And what it is, it's modeling. It's modeling for our kids that we want to fill our lives with what we want to fill it with first and leave the leftover time for screens. So what families will do is they'll put that little sheet up on their fridge. They'll make maybe a sheet for every kid, or depending on how old their kids are, they'll do a family sheet. And we're outside for 3 hours. We're outside for 2 hours. It's not about the minutes. It's not about that. It's not about what counts. As people say, well, did this count? My kid was in the driveway, but they were inside the cardboard box that they were playing in. Does that count? Yes, it will count. Just count it. Count it all, right? And they're going to color in the sheet. And it's a way to model for our kids. Like, this is going to be a good life. So the kids get really excited about, those are free. We have about 15 to 20 designs on our website. And people get them blown up at the little, office supply store. Some lady said she got blown up. It was the size of her living room wall. It was a mistake.
That's awesome.
It was a mistake. She said it was too big.
No.
But you can get it blown up real big. People put their handprints on them at the end of the year. You can start anytime. Say, look, from here till next year, we're trying to get outside for that. Whatever it is for you. If you're a single mom, you got split custody and you can do 200 hours, then you're going for that. But it's about showing our kids that we value that. We value them and their experiences that they're having, that they have a little bit of downtime, time just for them. And then you see, it changes your life.
Okay, we're going back to the 3 Fs. We're going to start with food. We're going to end with food, I should say. And we've got a 2-part food-related question for you. Part 1 is queso or guac. Part 2 is what's your favorite taco?
Okay, guac. Okay, and this is the other thing. I am not a taco connoisseur, so I don't really even understand the what's your favorite taco question. So what are some examples? Like, okay, I need a multiple choice.
You had a taco salad when we had lunch. We got to have lunch together
that was
today,
good.
and that counts.
That does.
Okay.
You had a taco and a salad.
I'm going to say that
Okay.
because
You
it
get
was
two.
delicious, and we'll shout out. It was from
Ladybird taco.
Lady
We
Bird.
had queso and guac, so you didn't have to choose either.
Yes. So I'm going to say guac and Ladybird Taco.
Mhm.
Shout out if you're ever in, where are we?
Nashville.
Nashville. We are in Nashville. That's a place to go.
It's
It
run by
is.
great people.
It
They're
is.
Yeah.
awesome
Friends of ours.
It's fun to
Yes.
introduce you
And that
to
was
it
like one of
today.
the best salads I'd ever had.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, I loved it.
We'll tell
So-
them you said
Yeah,
that.
we will.
So
Jenny,
my
what a
taco answer
delight.
is salad.
Okay, perfect.
That's a weird taco answer.
That's good. Thank you.
Jenny,
Man.
it is such a gift to be in
It
your company.
is. It is a
Aw,
gift.
You're
in your
so
company.
sweet.
No,
This is
we're
such a
so
gift to be here.
genuine.
We're such
was
fans
thrilled.
of yours.
We've been excited for months and months and months, and I'm such a huge fan of yours, and I'm using your books all the time. All the time. They have really changed my life. Like the fact that I could jump off those rocks and the trip that I planned in front of all those people, it was a really big deal. You know, so these are the skills that we're using with our own kids and helping our sons to, you know, really work on their emotional responses. And what you're doing is, I mean, isn't it wild how it's just like, even in just my own one little family up in Michigan, the impact runs deep. So,
Well,
and
your impact runs deep too.
thank you.
David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible.
Amanda Young, our operations manager,
Chris Starrett, our engineer,
our management team at H Squared.
and we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.